Today we continue with the story connected to Dhammapada Verse 24. This verse was spoken by the Buddha while he was dwelling at Veluvana in connection with Kumbhaghosaka. Long ago, a plague broke out at Rajagaha in the house of a wealthy treasurer. First the animals died, then the flies, then the cattle. Next the servants and the gatekeepers with their wives perished. Finally, the plague struck the treasurer, himself and his wife. Knowing that they had contracted the disease, the husband and wife, with tears in their eyes, looked at their son standing nearby and told him to break through the wall and flee. They told him not to be concerned about his parents, but to save his own life, and later to return home and dig up the treasure of 400 million buried there, so that he might live on it. Hearing this, the son wept bitterly, bade farewell to his parents, broke through the wall, and fled. He went into the forest to find a hiding place, stayed there for 12 years, and then returned home. When he left, he had only been a child. Now, when he returned, his hair and beard had grown long, and no one recognized him. He found the treasure and saw that it was still intact, but he did not dare take it out and use it, fearing that the villagers might grow suspicious, harass him, or even arrest him. So instead, he looked for work as a hired laborer in order to make a living. Dressed in rags, he went to the laborers' quarter and asked whether anyone needed a worker. They replied to him. They said to him, "If you do one part of our work, we will pay you in rice." "What sort of work it is that, friends?" "You must give orders and direct our work. You have to rise very early, go around among the workers, and call out to them, 'Sirs, get up, bring out the carts, yoke the oxen. It is time to take the elephants and horses out to graze. Ladies, rise, prepare the rice, boil the water.'" Excellent. And so the young rich man accepted the work. They gave him a place to stay, and he performed his duty regularly and with all his heart. One day, King Bimbisara, who was able to recognize people by their voices, heard his voice and at once said, "This is the voice of a wealthy man." A maidservant standing near the king heard this and thought that such a thing could not be possible. Wanting to investigate, she sent someone to inquire and learned that he was a poor man working for the servants. When the king heard the report, he said nothing further, but a few days later, when he heard the young man's voice again, he still declared with certainty that it was the voice of a wealthy man. Again and again, after repeated questioning and inquiries of every kind, the maidservant reported to the king that the young man was poor, yet the king still did not believe it. Then she thought that the king must surely be right, and so she felt it was her duty to discover the truth. She asked the king for 1,000 pieces of money, saying that she would send her own daughter to meet this man, and promised that she would bring the treasure back to the royal palace. Then the two of them, mother and daughter, dressed in rags, and went to the laborers' quarter, asking for lodging. For a few days before continuing their journey, the people there pointed out Kumbhaghosaka's house. At first he refused to let them stay, but after the two of them kept pleading again and again, he was finally compelled to consent. The maidservant did everything she could to win his favor. She prepared excellent food for him in the royal manner, with sauces and curries. At last, she began cutting the cords of his bed little by little over the course of 3 consecutive days. When Kumbhaghosaka irritably complained, she kept replying that she could not stop the neighborhood children from jumping up and down on it. Then one day, the whole bed collapsed to the ground because all the cords had been cut through. This time he could not restrain himself, but became furious because he no longer had a bed to lie on. Groaning, he cried out, "Alas, where am I to go now?" The maidservant, not letting the opportunity pass, answered at once, "Good sir, what can I do? I cannot drive away the neighbor's children who come to play and leap upon the bed. Please do not be troubled. Let me see what I can do for you, Yes? Then, turning to her daughter, the mother said sweetly, My dear daughter, make room for your elder brother to lie down. The daughter obeyed, moving over to one side, and he lay down beside her. That night, they became intimate. The next day, the daughter wept and told her mother what had happened. The mother comforted her, saying, Oh, what of that? One day, you must have a husband, and he must have a wife. Then she accepted him as her son-in-law. She continued her plan by sending word to the king, requesting that an order be given that work in the laborers' quarter should cease, and that anyone who disobeyed would be punished. The king approved. The mother-in-law then, pretending to be distressed, discussed with her son-in-law what should be done, for if work ceased, there would be no wages. Yet they did not dare disobey the king's order. At last, she urged him to borrow money so that they might have food for that holiday. He had no other choice, so he was forced to return to the place where the treasure was buried and take out exactly 1 coin for his mother-in-law. She accepted the money, but sent it to the king and used her own money for the household expenses instead. A few days later, she again asked the king to issue the same order once more. He had to return to the buried treasure and bring back another 3 coins. The final part of her plan was to ask the king to summon Kumbhaghosaka to the court. He refused to go, so the soldiers overpowered him, seized his hands and feet, and dragged him away. She reassured him, telling him to go without fear. When they met the king, she would report to His Majesty and ask that those who had dared to drag away her son-in-law be punished. Then she and her daughter went on ahead. When they arrived at the royal palace, she removed her ragged garments and put on splendid robes with all manner of glittering ornaments, and stood at one side of the king. Then Kumbhaghosaka was brought before the royal throne to answer the king's questions. Are you Kumbhaghosaka? Yes, Your Majesty. Why do you speak falsely while spending such immense wealth? My wealth? Where is it? Great king, I live by hired labor. It is not so. Why do you deceive me, Your Majesty? I do not deceive you. I have no wealth. The king pointed to the coins that his mother-in-law had sent and asked him, Then whose coins are these? Kumbhaghosaka recognized his own coins and was frozen with fear. Looking toward the king, he saw the 2 women there, magnificently adorned, and then understood how his coins had come into the king's hands. It was all a carefully prepared and skillfully concealed scheme, and these 2 women had been won over by the king. He stood stunned and speechless, not knowing what to say. The king, perceiving this, pressed him further. Speak, why have you acted in this way? Trembling, he replied, I had no protector, Your Majesty. No one shall protect you better than I. Your Majesty, I am greatly rejoiced to have the great king as my protector. I will protect you. How great is your wealth? 400 million coins, Your Majesty. Very well, I shall have your wealth brought here. But by what means? By carts, sire. When Kumbhaghosaka's entire fortune had been heaped up before the royal palace, the king assembled the people of the city of Rajagaha and asked whether there was anyone in the city who possessed wealth as great as this. No one was able to answer, and all the people with one accord requested the king to confer office upon him. The king agreed, appointed him as treasurer, and gave him a princess in marriage. Thereafter the king led him to pay homage to the Blessed One, and at the same time praised his virtue, saying that although he possessed great wealth, he had not relied upon it for enjoyment, but had been willing to live as a poor man, supporting himself by his own labor. Hearing this, the Buddha rejoiced and taught, saying, A man who lives in such a way, great king, is one who lives rightly. Theft and other evil deeds crush us not only in this present life, but also bring suffering in future existences. On the other hand, such a person exerts himself to the utmost is ever mindful, pure in bodily conduct, verbal conduct, and mental conduct, careful in every action and movement, restrained in bodily action, verbal action, and mental action, living righteously, never negligent or heedless. Such a one grows ever stronger in true vigor. And he concluded with Dhammapada Verse 24 as follows: energetic, mindful, pure in conduct, acting with care, self-restrained, living in accordance with the Dhamma. For one who lives without heedlessness, good repute steadily increases. The story of Kumbhaghosaka reminds us that a person's true worth does not lie in treasures kept hidden away, nor in rank and position later bestowed, but in how that person lives when no one knows who he is, in the midst of loneliness, insecurity, and having no one to rely on. He still chose the path of righteousness, guarding himself in mindfulness, being careful even in the smallest matters, and not allowing circumstances to push him into heedlessness or wrong conduct. It was precisely that quiet perseverance which brought about blessings, good repute, and a transformation of destiny. The Buddha taught that one who is not heedless, who knows how to restrain body, speech, and mind, who lives in accordance with the Dhamma, and who is diligent day by day, will see his good name steadily increase. This is not merely a good reputation in the world, but also the light of an inwardly purified heart, the very foundation that leads a person beyond suffering. Therefore, the most precious thing in life is not how much one possesses, but how one lives. Not how one appears in the eyes of others, but whether in each moment one is able to preserve wakefulness, uprightness, and wholesomeness. If this story has given you something to reflect upon, please leave a message or share your thoughts in the comments. Every sincere reflection not only helps the channel grow, but may also help awaken someone else amid the busyness of life. And if you would like to continue listening to profound and meaningful Buddhist stories that can illuminate your heart day by day, please subscribe to the channel and join me in the videos to come.